Hello, everybody. This is Kastner-Lang, host of Dharma Unfiltered, episode, I believe, 17, coming in once again from Ottawa, Wisconsin, Kettle Moraine Golf Course. We're here with Poldi Wieland. He's a senior at University of Wisconsin La Crosse. He's host of the Year of Plenty podcast, and he's very interested in hunting, gathering real food. So I think that we're going to have a lot to talk about in terms of food. Evan, my business partner, Evan, and I were actually on his podcast. I think it was about a year ago. I don't know,
Almost already.
Yeah, it was. I think it was like right at the September of last year of 2019.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I loved having you guys on to talk about your experience, in the food business, starting a food company, and a lot of my listeners on my podcast really enjoyed that one. So we'll have to do another one soon.
I look forward to it. So Poldi, just tell the people who you are, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Reed was saying, I'm Poldi. I'm a senior right now at La Crosse in Wisconsin, University of La Crosse, and I'm almost done. Started my podcast a couple of years ago called Year of Plenty, and that was really, just a fun project. And since then, I've just been trying to build that out and grow it, and it was all really just a space for me to learn about food, kind of grow as a foodie, and for others to come in and learn alongside with me. And that's the beauty of podcasts, really, to me personally. I love them so. I learned so much from podcasts, and I'm happy you're doing one too now. I really think podcasts will revolutionize the world. But yeah, for me, I, as you were saying, into food. I've been a foodie my whole life. Actually, my family is just a family of foodies. We, my mom, my stepdad, they're just into doing all sorts of stuff. We're from Germany originally, so we like a lot of traditional German foods. And both my grandparents, my grandmas are just phenomenal cooks. So I've been spoiled with food my whole life. Actually, as a kid, I did get pretty chubby and big because at that point, food was just, did it taste good to me? It wasn't like, hey, is the food I'm eating, is that helping me like getting healthy, or is it giving me well-being? It was just more like, can I get a quick like dopamine rush from this food? My dad's been a hunter his whole life, and he is really the one that got me into wild foods, which I talk about a lot on my podcast. And just, I spend a lot of my time involved in learning about wild foods. And, by him taking me along as a kid hunting, I really learned early on that food doesn't come from the grocery store. We might get it there, but it really comes from the farms, sometimes from labs, sometimes from big food producers, or for most of the time, actually. But there is something beyond the supermarket shelves, and that's something I'm trying to explore a lot in my learning as well. But from there, I really, I said I was getting fat as a kid up until, I would say, like until I was 14, and then I just realized that I didn't want to look that way, and I wanted to just make some major changes, and I kind of started starving myself, which is not good. I don't recommend that to anyone. I mean, I do a lot of fasting now. We can get into that a little bit later if you want, and because that's really, really good for you. And so I guess I was doing some prolonged fasts then, but I was mostly just in a severe calorie deficit, which you also don't want to be because your body needs the right amount of calories to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
So once I lost all this weight, I got into bodybuilding because now, I wanted to gain all this muscle again and get bigger again. And that's really the first time I started eating clean, like what people would consider clean foods, real foods, whole foods, just because I started to realize that in order to feel healthy, to get this body I want, I need to fuel it with the right things. And that's really when I got into that, just thinking about my food in a deeper level, thinking not just about its taste, but also, is it going to fuel me? And that's really where learned, or I kind of started thinking about, wow, you are what you eat. And that's something I think we talked about a bit when you were on my podcast too. uh, that's something I really want people to take away from the things I do, or just from talking, I guess. But you are what you eat, and then you are what you ate. But yeah, from that point on, I started the podcast. I did have an issue with the bodybuilding, because at that point, bodybuilders eat a lot of high carbohydrate diets. And for those listeners that don't really know, there's about, most foods are made out of carbohydrates, fat, or protein. Those are like your big, they call them macronutrients. And during the time of bodybuilding, I was really into just, what they would call, if it fits your macros back then. That's what the bro science was around it, kind of. And it was all about eating high carbohydrate foods, super low fat, and enough protein to make those muscles grow. But it was always carbs, 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 give your body that energy. And what I was experiencing were significant or severe energy dips. And this was when I was probably like 19, 20.
Mhm.
And I was starting to realize that was coming from the crazy amount of carbs I was eating. And that led me down a whole rabbit hole of looking into low carb diets pretty early on, before they were getting any sort of hype. The keto diet. There's this book I read called The Primal Blueprint, which absolute game changer. It's by Mark Sisson. That really focuses on looking or learning about the food system, learning about how the food system that we're currently in is kind of not giving us many choices in terms of good food, and that an ancestral way of eating, like a way of eating that is more aligned to how we have evolved, is a much better for our well-being. And so yeah, Primal Blueprint, that's that book that really led me down that rabbit hole. Yeah, from there, I guess at the same time, I guess a big thing I should probably say about the ancestral eating is that it's very focused around real foods, like I was saying, and cutting out foods that don't, cutting out foods that don't do well with a certain person. Because
Mhm.
not all, like we can get into this more, but many people don't realize that a lot of food they're eating is causing some sort of reaction, be it acne, be it eczema, skin conditions, or maybe just like what I would always get to when I was eating a ton of carbs and refined foods was just I would wake up with a really like foggy head, couldn't think clear. So yeah, the whole idea of ancestral eating is kind of cutting out a lot of the carbohydrates and a lot of those refined foods. And then from there I just started to love that. I actually moved back from the US to Germany. My stepbrother over there was at the same time getting into um, a organic farming internship or apprenticeship over there. We do, like, they're usually 3 years long. So he was getting involved in how our food is produced, and he was sharing all this information with me, and all, like, he was really exposing some of the issues in the food industry, or just in the agricultural industry, the conventional one, and learning about how to grow foods with nature instead of against it, in this organic way. And yeah, all that, from there we started growing our own garden, and we started hunting and fishing seriously. And that's really how I feel like I got reconnected to my food, um, and started going down the rabbit hole, started the podcast. And yeah, that's where I'm at today. I mean, I could go on longer and longer, but don't want to keep
Awesome, man.
talking
Well,
too
I,
much.
I think that food is just so important. I think it's kind of the most important thing. And when you said, as you kind of got more into gardening and hunting and fishing, you got reconnect with your food. But at the same time, like when you're consuming real foods that come from the earth and not no fucking wheat thins or Doritos or any of that processed shit, you're gonna become more in tune with the earth in and not only in the food, but in the time that you're spending hunting and fishing. And I agree. I think that a lot of people's problems could be solved, especially up here in the north, or I guess in Wisconsin, because Wisconsin is really, really unhealthy relative to other states and other countries, in fact.
But
Um,
not just Wisconsin. But yeah, continue.
Not just Wisconsin, but especially. Um, but so many problems, whether it be immune system, whether it be anxiety, depression. It's just people oftentimes, I think that doctors are just overprescribed in general in our society. People would not need to go to the doctor as much if they ate real good food. And it's as simple as that. Why is it so hard for people to get past the point of just eating what is quickest or what is cheapest? Or I shouldn't even say cheapest,
But
but
it is often the cheapest food too.
often, yeah. Why?
I think all that is really a big failure of our food system that we're experiencing right now, and also just education around food. Like you were saying, Wisconsin is one of those states that a lot of unhealthy people live in, but it's not just Wisconsin, it's the entire world at this point, especially out of Western countries, with the US being like the leader in obesity. I think I just read a fact on the CDC website the other day that it's almost 40% of Americans now, 20, like age 20 or up, that are obese or considered overweight. So that's a serious issue because we're living in this area of calorie excess. Like we have more calories available to us than ever before. Um, and the foods that this industrial food system is providing to us, for the most part, if you go to a grocery store, the most of the food you're going to find there is ultra processed. And these foods are designed to trick us, to trick our primal evolutionary reward system into wanting more of them, eating more of them, and thinking that we're not satiated, meaning that we're not, that we're still hungry, basically. So I think there is, people need to realize that there is these food companies out there, these big food companies are actively trying to get us hooked. And actually, sugar has been shown, all these added sugars that they're putting in a lot of food, it's been shown to trigger similar regions in your brain than cocaine when it comes to the addiction part of it. So I think personally, big failure of the food system. I do want to show you. I brought like a little chart later
Mhm.
on this topic, but there's also the failure of the U.S. dietary guidelines. When you think about what is healthy, a lot of people always go to the U.S. Dietary guidelines that have been around for like 50 years or so. But there's now a lot of nutritionists that are going against those and saying, hey, a lot of what we've been following just doesn't work because we're getting unhealthier and unhealthier. And we know a lot of this is dietary related. Obviously, not everything. Not all of these metabolic, or I should say, chronic diseases are diet related, but diet sure has a big effect on it.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you knew this, but I was just reading this chapter by Rob Wolf, who's really big in the ancestral health space, and one of his books called Wired to Eat, which is another one I'll probably be recommending a lot of books during this talk, but um, he really made the point that the first dietary guidelines that the US came up with 50 years ago, it wasn't even scientists that did that. It was mostly lawyers and clerks, and they did talk to one like Harvard nutritionist about it, but they basically decided to go recommend this high carb, super low saturated fat mostly diet, and it's clearly not been working.
Mhm.
So those are all issues, and then also we as a government, like the US government, is subsidizing the ingredients that go into this super cheap food. So
Mhm.
they're actually subsidizing corn. They're subsidizing some of those crops that are used to produce, high fructose corn syrup, all these industrial seed oils, all this refined food. So that is why that food is so cheap. A lot of the food we're eating should not be this cheap, but it can be because we're giving it these subsidies. So
Mhm.
yeah. And then, like I said, yeah.
That's something that we kind of, Evan and I think we told you about in the last podcast. I think that had happened by then with the standard of identity of ketchup. That was crazy to me. That for those who don't know, so we when we were becoming licensed to sell by the state, there's a standard of identity for ketchup, and it basically it told us that we had to include a nutritive carbohydrate sweetener in the ketchup to be considered ketchup. A nutritive carbohydrate sweetener is any sweetener that has caloric value, so basically sugar or high fructose corn syrup. So there's got to be some lobbying or some going on from these big companies trying to keep that in place. And luckily, that standard of identity actually changed a few months after. Uh,
Really?
yeah, after it was funny because Barb, our FDA agent in Madison, kind of let it pass. She marked the whole case as kind of exempt. We're small enough that it doesn't really matter. There are other products, other ketchups that weren't using a nutritive carbohydrate sweetener, so it was weird. And you know that standard of identity, that code hadn't been changed since I think it was like 1989 or something crazy. So yeah, I mean there's crazy shit going on with the government kind of controlling the food that we eat in a sense. And I think that also people are often, nutrition is so confusing to so many people. But I think that, I mean, for someone that's obese, someone that's overweight, I would say, all right, stop reading all these different articles. Stop, I'm going to say this, stop doing research and just stop eating processed foods.
Yeah.
Like, stop eating sugar to start. I lost 30 pounds in 3 months going off of
Yeah,
added
I was gonna
sugar.
ask you. You did that, right? You did a whole like period of no added sugars at all.
Yeah, and but the thing is, I'm still like, I don't remember. I really don't eat added sugar now because once you get off of it, like it's like you have no desire for it, and I feel good without it. Like I have this like smoothie every day, and I put cocoa powder in there and like protein powder, but like that's enough sweetness for me for the day. I don't need chocolate or added
Well,
sugar.
that's the thing. If you do want those kind of foods, you know, those high fat, high carb foods, which I think you should avoid if you're trying to lose weight, which is the goal long term. We just need, as a society, we need to lose weight and get better, metabolically better in the long term. But like you're saying, just make your own at home. You know,
Mhm.
there's so many recipes, low carb recipes now, just low sugar and a couple ingredients, and it just tastes as good as the protein bar you'd buy at the store, but it has, you know, 20x less ingredients than what you would get. So if you shift that focus, start taking some of that into, or that making those foods into your own hands, I think you can already just make a lot of progress. And or even just cut out the you know, I always say to a lot of people, start cutting out the soda. That was huge for me when I started cutting out the soda. You know, think about it. I mean, you're drinking all day long, right? And you're always drinking these sugary foods, sugary drinks, and oftentimes they have an insane amount of sugar. Like if you would see it in like sugar cubes, you'd be like, I'd never touch that.
It
Um,
it just kind of blows my mind sometimes when I see like older people or middle-aged people that are overweight. I'm like, it's the thing is, it's really, I don't care. You know, I come from a genetically fat, like we have the fat gene, like a lot of fat people in my family and my aunt, whatever. But like, it's all in your control. Like, and the beautiful thing about food, and the beautiful thing about your health is literally it's a matter of like, when I was really young, I was when I was like 8 or 9 years old, I was thinking, okay, I have full control over what I eat. I don't have to eat what I don't want to eat. And that's something that I guess it's like habits that people get in having, you know, whether it be Taco Tuesday or Burger Wednesday or whatever it is. It's like,
marketing there.
it's exactly. And it's like, it's all in your control. And it starts, if you're listening to this right now and you want to make a change, it starts right now. It's a beautiful thing. You don't have to, you could stop listening right now and just go start eating whole foods, and you'll already start to see a change in a week.
Absolutely.
I guarantee you,
Yeah. You,
if you traditionally eat added sugars, when you go off added sugars for 2 weeks, you're going to lose at least 5-10 pounds. I guarantee it.
yeah, and people don't need to do this whole, you know, low carb keto. I mean, that's been working for a lot of people. That's been one of the big hypes in the kind of nutrition circles. But yeah, just eating those real foods, you're automatically going to cut out so much of the excess energy that you're consuming, because a lot of that excess energy that we're seeing is actually coming from those super processed foods. And I do you think I can show you an article here quick? Can I share my screen?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me,
I think I can do it from my side too.
Okay, now you should be able to share.
Sweet. So let's see. 1 second. So this is from a guy I just interviewed on my podcast. It's not out yet, but his name is Marty Kendall, and he's really looking at um, it's all about his whole work is on eating for nutrients, which is something I'm very interested in. And it's like I said, all about picking the right real foods so that you're getting adequate nutrition. All right, 1 sec. Here we go. And this article is called "Why Our Food System is Screwed," and I recommend everyone listening to read this because it has a lot of good facts in it. So he got a lot of his data here from the USDA, which is the U.S. United States Agriculture Service here in the U.S. And if you look at, where's the chart? Let me find it, Greg. This one. Can you see it pretty well? Do I need
Yeah.
to zoom in?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so look at this. Where is our energy coming from? From 1970 to 2010. So if you're looking at this chart on the left, you see the calories, like in the y-axis, you see calories per day per person. And on the x-axis, the horizontal axis, you see the years, right? You can tell a ton of our food here is coming from flours and cereals, added fats and oils, and added sugars and sweeteners. Not very much is coming from vegetables and fruits. A decent amount, about 500 calories from meat, eggs, and nuts. But a vast majority is coming from these highly processed ingredients that are going into these highly processed foods. So that is where we're getting our main increase in calories from. And if you cut those out, you should already have, it should be going for a lot better for you. Obviously, I'm not a nutritionist, but from people I've talked to, there was another chart I want to show you here.
But then it's not only calories. When you're eating those processed sugars, I was listening to Joe Rogan talk about this. Like your body doesn't know what to do with it. Your body, like sometimes after you eat a big brownie or ice cream, you're kind of feeling the shakes or feeling like shit. Like, but when you eat these real foods, you feel real. Like your body knows what to do with meat. Your body knows what to do with vegetables.
Yes. But I do want to say to the added sugars, we are on a decline of added sugars, interestingly. Like if you look at this chart right here, you can tell that since the 2000s, added sugars have declined, but so have all the real foods here, right? And then if you look at added fats and oils, those have spiked like crazy. And that is actually where most of our energy intake is coming from. Look at this chart here, added fat intake. I mean, that's just
Wow.
This is really important here on this chart because we're getting these added fats and oils not from real animal products. Traditionally we were getting our cooking fat from lard, which is basically rendered pork fat, from tallow, which is rendered cow fat. Then obviously you can do the same with wild animals. Like I hunt a lot of deer and I always take the fat because I don't want to waste anything, and I'll render it down, which basically means I'm just putting it in a big pot and I'm slowly cooking it until it melts all the fat down. And then I put it in jars and cool it off. And you can use it like similar to butter, honestly. Well,
Okay.
those animal fats, those real foods, have been on a drastic decline. But what's been increasing like crazy are these refined salad and cooking oils, these super like processed foods. And for anyone interested in that, I mean, you just need to look into how those foods are made. And I think you'd probably reconsider eating them. Actually, a lot of the canola oil and whatnot, they have to deodorize it, and they basically have to change the color and change the smell of it, because otherwise we would not be using that as food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they heat it up to these crazy amounts of these crazy temperatures where a lot of the fat particles get destroyed. And also, if you think about all these seeds, don't have much fat in them, so you need a crazy amount of like canola seeds to make a teaspoon or tablespoon of canola fat. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, anyone interested in that, look that up. Look up vegetable oils and the issues with them, because it's something I'm still learning about too. But I think that's going to be a lot bigger, not necessarily bigger, but it's going to be just as big of an issue that is going to be pointed out in the nutrition circles here in the next couple of years. that we just haven't had on our radar. But it all comes back to these processed foods, really.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think the future of food is in both the short term and the long term? Are we going to get healthier in America? Are we going to eventually get back to these real foods? And how is that going to happen?
Yeah, I don't that's a hard question. I don't think everyone's going to get back to real food. It's just if you look at our global population, the way it's been increasing like crazy, if we wanted to get everyone back on real food, we need to make some serious changes in the way we grow our food, in the way we get our food and produce it. And right now, business wise and government wise, it's just not lining up to go into that direction.
Mhm.
Um, like I like I said, we're still subsidizing these. We're basically subsidizing these highly processed foods, and that would have to change first. Then we need to change the way we grow foods. Um, in a much more sustainable and regenerative way. And that's something I'm hoping to explore in my podcast a lot more is these regenerative farming methods and farming techniques that are now popping up, where the farm is actually working together with nature, extracting from it, but also making sure they're putting back. A lot of these current farms, a lot of the conventional farms, they will just grow huge monocrops of corn. I'm sure have you ever driven through like Idaho? There's some
Yeah.
states that are the corn states. You drive through them, you just see miles and miles of corn. And that is a system that absolutely depletes nature, depletes the soil. It takes from it the nutrients, but it also, we're using all these pesticides that is killing all the microbes in the soil, killing all the small worms and insects that are needed to keep that soil healthy, because in the end, it's the soil that provides the nutrients to the food, which we later eat. I said at the beginning, you are what you eat, but you got to take that even a step further, because you are what you eat ate. We can get into that more too as well. But I think if we make some serious changes in how people think about their food and just educate them more, make people realize that food is fun. There's tons of rabbit holes to go to to with it. There's so many skills around it that you can learn, and I don't think we're gonna change everyone, but I do hope that a lot more people are gonna start thinking about it deeply and making those changes. And with those, if the demand is there,
Hmm.
I mean, look at it like the last 3 years, the amount of low carb foods or just organic foods that are coming out. I mean, you with your product too. I think if the demand is there, that's when we can maybe have some impact on where the money is coming from. What and the funding that's going into food from investors and companies.
Hmm.
I mean, well, have you seen any? Have you seen maybe more competitors come up since you guys started? Are, are there other organic ketchup companies or
Yeah,
sauce companies coming out?
definitely. Yeah. And the organic food industry is the fastest growing food industry in the
Yeah,
United.
that.
So that I think that in general is a good sign for nutrition in the U.S. But yeah, of course, there's constantly new health food brands, whether it be in the higher velocity protein bar, coffee, whatever that section, or whether it be in the slower items like ketchup. And I think this is good. But I think that our target market are middle really 25 to 50-year-old, 55-year-old, 60-year-old moms who are buying foods for their kids, because we look at that as, first of all, realistically, those are the people that are shopping, and we kind of want to, if we can set kids up, if we can set kids up, and then the way that I look at ketchup, obviously ketchup is a very small portion of what you're eating, like throughout
Mhm.
the week or whatever. But if you care about eating healthy ketchup, you should care about eating healthy everything else. So if we can kind of set kids up with this much healthier product, and just start to get these concepts of organic, no sugar added, because those two things, man, are super super important, and getting those concepts into the heads of kids, because in kids, I mean, all, even us, like, we're the next generation. And I think, to be honest, our generation looks pretty healthy in general. Like I think especially at college, and I mean, I guess I work out pretty much every day, so most of the people in the gym are in generally good shape. But even like I worked out at the YMCA this morning, and in general, the older generation is definitely fatter, and our generation is very, very healthy. So I think that like we're making good progress, I think.
Yeah, maybe I sounded a little pessimistic, to the when I first answered your question. I just think it's if we change, it's going to be a long change and it's going to take a lot. And I just see the although I bash on this food system and this industrial agriculture because I see where it's going in the long term, it's not sustainable. Like I said, it's going to be destroying our soils. And most civilizations, if you look at how they fell, often it was a depletion of resources, including the soil, and just they couldn't produce food anymore. But there's no doubt that this industrial agriculture system, this green revolution, has produced more food than ever before. I mean, I said that at the beginning. We're in excess of calories right now, and we have so much food waste. It's all being thrown out, a lot of it at least. So, the question is, future food. Can we meet the global food demand, but still do it in a way that's healthy? Because what we're seeing the last 200 years since we started eating these industrially produced foods, its health has just been going down. Obviously, it's probably not just diet related, but again, I think there's a huge impact of the food on your health. And I mean, I'm not the only one that thinks that. There's a lot of nutritionists that and a lot of studies to back that up. So,
And I think, yeah, and health is a big concept. So obviously that means mental, spiritual, physical. But again, like I said before, everything revolves around your food. So if you care about your food, if you have, and I think that the mental clarity which I reached in those 3 months sophomore year off added
mhm.
sugar, being very, very it wasn't just off added sugar. I was just super disciplined eating real foods, and I was at a caloric deficit too because I was losing weight. But just kind of the mental clarity that you can reach. Initially, if you're initially losing weight, a lot of people have heard talk about reaching a very high state of mental clarity when you're in that process. You're a week in, you're getting into the routine, it feels good. But then also when you get to a point kind of where me and you are at, where we're both kind of trying to build muscle, we're at a point where I'm trying to lose a little bit more fat, but we're pretty low body fat relatively, and we're trying to build, and it's a constant sustainable cycle for humans. It's you know being able to think about everything that you eat makes you disciplined in other aspects of your life.
Absolutely, yeah, huge. I agree with that. That's something that helped me a lot. Bodybuilding and then being very strict on my food and how I eat is definitely helping me be disciplined in other aspects. That's very true. I would agree with that. And then also, that's one of the reasons I've been going so far down a rabbit hole with this wild food thing. Because you were talking about working out and health. Well, that the wild food kind of connects everything, in my opinion. Like it connects the mind, body, soul with food, with nature, and I'm going out there. I've been going down to hunting, foraging, and fishing. Like those are the three things I've been really going down the rabbit hole with, and all of those require you to put significant, if you're
Physical
doing it right. Yeah, sorry.
physical effort, yeah.
Yeah, physical effort. Yeah, and that you can do those. You can go fishing and just sit in a boat all day, or you could go fly like trout fishing, fly fishing in the mountains, and walk 5, 6, 7 miles a day easily, easily. You can go hunt from your vehicle. I guess some people do that. Or you could go on a backcountry hunt again in the mountains, or I mean, even just here in Wisconsin, there's times where I'm hunting public land and I'm walking 50 minutes in to my spot. So when you're going after these wild foods, not only are you getting an incredibly or not only are you getting incredible nutrition from those foods, really high quality, you're supporting a system. You know, one of the main reasons I hunt is because I don't want to support this factory farming system. I still do. Like, I still buy uh, every now and then meat that is where I don't know where it's coming from really, but my goal is to get a freezer full of wild game and fish so that I don't have to go buy meat at the grocery store.
Mhm.
And so I'm getting my exercise in by doing these activities. I'm getting my nutrition, right? And I'm building skills that no one can take away from me. There, you know, if you think about it, food, cooking, fishing, hunting, foraging, all that. I mean, those are like the most basic human skills, right? I mean, that's what we've been doing forever. And without that, humans would not be where we're at today. We've made all this progress the last several thousand years since the agricultural revolution about 8 to 10,000 years ago, with society and whatnot. But before then, we were hunter and gatherers. A lot of our day depended on if we could find food and how good we were at it. So that's kind of where the whole spiritual side comes into it, because I'm not necessarily religious. Like, I am Roman Catholic, I guess, but I kind of my church is nature, and that's where the spiritual aspect comes into it, really. So you have the mind, the body, and the spirit all connected through wild food, and I really, really want more people to explore that as an option. And the amount of food you can get from the wild, like, some people don't understand. Yes, it takes time. It's not easy. Yes, 90% of my hunts are just grueling, sitting in the cold, not fun. But you build character, and you can get the reward is huge, because if you get, let's say you get an elk a year, I mean, that's several hundred pounds of meat, for your freezer. Or you get like 3, 4 white-tailed deer, which is easily doable here in Wisconsin, especially if you have someone who's a private landowner and has an excess of deer, which we are experiencing all throughout the U.S. We have so many deer, we don't even know what to do with them,
Mhm.
like, to the point where we know we need to hunt a lot more. So the amount of food you can get is incredible, and it's definitely doable with these skills to just survive a whole year off of wild foods. I think it's easier if you're only eating meat, not as many plants. The foraging thing is definitely even a little harder, I would say, than hunting, or just a barrier for entry is a lot bigger. There's a lot of poisonous plants out there and mushrooms that you definitely don't want to eat. But that's also just a learning process. And if you want, I can talk a little bit about how some ways people can get started in the wild food scene, and just some ways for them to progress, you know, learn those skills fast. If you want me to
Yeah.
go into that, but yeah.
Well, yeah, first of all, I think I like what you said about kind of this is what, our ancestors were doing. This is what humans have been doing for forever. And I was saying to my dad the other day, I was saying, I think like the key to moving our society forward is in some cases kind of reverting back to whether it be, way back hundreds of years ago or even 1960s, 1970s. And I was more so thinking on the track of, without social media and with, real life conversations and more bipartisan politics. But
Yeah.
I was thinking more on that side. But I think that there's a lot to learn from our history. And I'm not saying that as I hated history class because it didn't teach anything that was relatively important. But there are a lot of like little kind of hidden history things that aren't necessarily taught in school that there's so much to learn about. And I think that if we can, like, yes, it's important to very much live in the present, but you don't want to get caught up in the present. You don't want to get caught up in, and by that I mean you don't want to get caught up in, I guess, what everyone is doing and the matrix of what everyone is doing. You kind of want to draw the great things from the people around you and from the past and incorporate that into your life, and obviously live in a 2021 world, and also be thinking in the future, because these things that worked hundreds of years ago are going to work hundreds of years from now. And that's not necessarily the case for some of these things that people are spending a lot of time doing right now.
I love that, getting out of the matrix. I think getting into food and really understanding it, focusing on these real foods and learning about them, you absolutely get out of the matrix. You start to see, wow, all this food I've been eating has been causing me or has been making me feel shitty,
Mhm.
or wow, I can actually lose weight. Like what you were saying earlier with the, the fat gene. I used to think I have the fat gene. And everyone in my family that's still fat thinks they have the fat gene. But I think that's just something we tell ourselves.
Mhm.
There's definitely something to it, but food and exercise can do a lot, and discipline.
Yes.
But yeah, just getting out of the matrix, and all these rabbit holes that you can go down with food, like the history you were just mentioning. I mean, there's so much history that you can learn about food, and how did the Romans eat? How did people in South America eat 600 years ago? How did our ancestors, like way before the agricultural revolution, eat? I mean, those are all, to me, that's also really fascinating stuff, and
And
I do
hundreds of
think.
years ago, those people, like, their lifestyle made them eat healthy. Like, they weren't, these
Mm,
Roman gladiators and shit weren't about to go Roman gladiate with eating like processed sugars. Like, it's not sitting in a cubicle all day and then driving home and having a beer and watching a game on the couch. Like, it's just not at all that lifestyle. And I don't want to like you can't be healthy by living that kind of lifestyle. You got to be eating to live active. You got to be eating to live.
yeah, I do agree. Yeah, the lifestyle these days is, it's really a combo of food and just a lack of exercise that we're facing today. And yeah, people back then, they were in the field. Most people were farmers. They were working all day long. So yeah, they can eat, maybe some, even eat some foods that, some of those processed foods, for example, that I was saying people should avoid, because they're burning off these calories all the time. But we're eating in a calorie excess, and we're definitely not burning enough of them
Mhm.
these days. And then also, a lot of these processed foods have ingredients where we just don't really know what they do yet. We don't have much study, like science on it. And people believe that every ingredient that gets approved needs to be going through these rigorous, studies and rigorous scientific processes. But that's not true at all. Like if someone wants to look that up, it's called GRAS, GRAS, and this is, the FDA pretty much labels food ingredients as generally recognized as safe, which doesn't mean much at all. Like companies could submit their new ingredient that they made in a lab, which was actually done for the Beyond Burger, for one of those ingredients that made that fake burger look like, or it gave it the feel of bleeding, basically. So it would be more like a real meat. It would actually start bleeding. Well, that was a GRAS, a generally recognized as safe. But there's, a lot of those ingredients, there's not much science on it at all, if any. The companies, I did a whole podcast episode on it if someone wants to look into it. But before I talk for
The
another 10 minutes.
Impossible Burger is something that I want to ask you about because I
Yeah.
laugh at that. I laugh at the Impossible. I see. I I've watched like What the Health. I've done some research on veganism. I know some vegans. So I am not at all opposed to veganism. It works for some people. And like I know some guys that are pretty jacked and they swear by veganism, like, and they, you basically can get all of your nutrients through plants alone. So I'm a firm believer in that, but it's also it depends on the person, and it kind of whatever works best for you. And there's
It's
also,
incredibly hard to get all your nutrients, from plants,
well, and I think that
but you can do it.
I think it's logistically hard too, because I was thinking a couple weeks ago I was trying to just do like a week vegan just to like try it, and I just couldn't. Like I couldn't get enough. I mean, being an 18-year-old kid, I got to eat, and I was just like hungry all the time. I had no energy in the gym. Like I just could not do it. But going back to the like Beyond like Burger, Impossible Burger, or whatever, like
Hmm.
I just find it funny that someone who, so say they're vegan, they don't want to eat meat. Shouldn't a vegan be, when I think of vegan, I think of someone who's very, very, very health conscious. Like, why the hell are they eating a burger? Like, you're
It's
trying to
more,
eat, it's weird.
I think veganism has falsely been um linked to health. You think, oh, someone who's vegan is health conscious. It's more of an moral and ethical way of eating than healthy, I would say. We've kind of like, now everyone thinks
In
that
some
plant-based.
cases, in some
Yeah,
cases.
yeah. But I think like a lot of people think plant-based and they automatically think healthy.
Mhm.
And that is due to, in my opinion, that is a lot due to just marketing by companies. The science there is not there. I mean, there's this whole carnivore diet movement right now
Yeah.
with like scientists and you know nutritionists that only eat meat. They eat a lot of organ meats. They don't just eat muscle meat. They only eat animal products, I should say. And they're meeting all their health markers. They've been doing it long term now, even like several years, and looking great and not nutrient deficient and whatnot.
Mhm.
Well, I don't think that plant-based automatically means healthy. I do think that most people who go plant-based, they start often cutting out certain foods that might make you feel shitty, but that's also not really the case, because if you look at most plant-based products out there that are being hyped up, they're all super processed, like these Impossible Burgers
Mhm.
and Beyond Burger, Beyond Meat, and whatnot. I don't even know why they call it meat. First of all, like, just call it something else, or
Yeah.
don't call it a burger. Don't call it almond milk. Like, it's not milk. That's my kind of thinking on it. Just give it a new name. Give it a new cool name. And I don't mind if anyone eats that way. If anyone eats vegan, I just personally I don't think it's very natural, and I think it's incredibly hard to
I
get
think
all your
at the
nutrition from
same
it.
time, it's all relative. So like it's definitely more natural. Like I would much rather see someone eating vegan than eating tons of processed fast food. Like it's like
If they're doing, but if you look at, I mean, how many vegans are growing, are actually only consuming vegetables and fruits, and a lot of them are eating these super processed foods because that's what's available,
Mhm.
vegan wise. How many of them are growing their own garden? Like, I think if you want to do vegan correctly, you should be growing your own garden, maybe with friends, uh, not just, a lot of vegans they're really worried about the right the ethical implications, like how are these our animals treated. Animals are A lot of livestock animals are being mistreated in these
which I think
farms, and I
you
think
would
that's
you would agree with in a lot of cases, right? And that's
absolutely, like, that's one of the main reasons I hunt. That's one of the main reasons I want to go for want encourage people to eat from organic farms, or buy from regenerative organic farms and whatnot. But um it's just, if you go vegan, I do think you really need to watch out that you're not just eating these super processed foods.
Mhm.
And just because you can have a super processed food be plant based, and just because it has that plant based label on there, people think it's healthy.
And I think that kind of more processed vegan diet is more common up here for vegans up here. But like, in Miami, very, very health conscious city in general. And I came back here and I was like, God, I haven't seen so many fat people in one place. It was funny, when I got back to Milwaukee Airport. But I do this farmers market there for KP. It's like a fully vegan like organic market, and it's all whole foods. There's nothing processed. It's
That's
like,
awesome.
and the people there I've talked to, because I'm trying to learn always from these
Mhm.
people, and like probably I think all of them for the most part are vegan, and I'm the one like not fully vegan. um but yeah, I mean those people, they swear by it, and they say, and that goes back to, I'm just trying to find similarities between the carnivore diet and the vegan diet, because they seem on paper so different, but at the same time, again, think about those two diets compared to what everyone else is eating. Like
Mhm.
still, it's at the end of the day, it's just whole foods. It's just,
Yeah,
and I think John Mackey is the CEO of Whole Foods, is pretty damn fucking smart for naming it
that
Whole.
was a good one. Yeah, that was a good episode on Joe Rogan, if you
Oh,
listen to that one.
yeah, I did. Yeah, I love his concept of just like conscious capitalism, and
Yeah.
how, and so going into that, I think that I'm a believer in capitalism, but at the same time, it's the money will, how do I say this? People will fill holes in the market where there's demand. And if there's increase, like for example, right now, if there's increasing demand in organic, we're starting an organic ketchup and we're filling those holes. But, we need more of that. We need across the board, and we need some sort of more sustainable solution for wild foods. And because, if I'm just talking to you right now, it's like, sure, it's easy for me to say, like, I'd love to, eat more wild game and stuff, but I it's just not as practical or logistical as going to the store.
But
So
what you can do is you can find your local farm. You can go to a farmer's market, support those local food purveyors, and you can even go to their farm and really convince yourself that the way they are raising their livestock, the way they're growing your food aligns with your ethics or your moral code. Because yeah, a lot of all these companies that are selling these super processed, like the Impossible Burger and all that, they all market themselves as this like morally, ethically
yeah,
sustainable company. But
you're
what they're support
telling the people.
yeah, and what they're supporting is this industrial agricultural system that's absolutely destroying our planet right now. It's destroying the soil, which, by the way, the soil holds a lot of carbon. So the more we deplete that, the more carbon escapes out into the atmosphere. And then they're getting their ingredients again from these huge farms that have all these monocultures, pesticides, fertilizers. The pesticides run off in lakes and whatnot. Sad to say, but a lot of vegans don't know. It's the amount of animals that columbines kill every year, just like going through a field of corn. Plant-based, right? You're killing a lot of animals there. Those farmers aren't going through those fields looking for deer fawns. That's what me and my dad did in Germany as
That's
when I was
interesting.
a kid. We would walk, like the farmer would call us, "Hey, I'm about to take down this wheat field. I'm about to take down this cornfield. If you want to check for fawns right now, go do it. I'm not gonna." So we would go and walk through, sometimes find fawns, literally take him and put him in the woods. Well, the farmers on these giant farms, oftentimes they're not even farmers into tractors. These tractors are GPS controlled, and
Mhm.
they'll just be driving without drivers or even the columbines. So you're not completely removing yourself as a vegan if you're not growing your own food. That's
That's
just
a
what
good
I was
point.
going to say later.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't really think about that.
Yeah. But, not to bash on vegan. I don't care if anyone eats that way. I just think I don't think people should immediately assume, okay, more ethical, more healthy because I'm eating plant-based.
Hmm.
Not necessarily. It's all about how, it's all about where it's coming from, how it's made. And that's something I'm trying to explore in my podcast with food. Like a lot of farms are factory farms. There's a good amount of, especially when it comes to chicken and pork, huge amounts of factory farming going on. But that's not the same for cattle, for example. There are regenerative farms out there that are grazing cattle in a way where they're grass fed, pasture raised, grass finished. They're outside for most of their life. They're There's this thing called adaptive grazing, I think it's called adaptive multi-patch grazing, I believe it's called. And what they're doing is they're basically grazing cows on a big pasture, but in chunks. So they'll have an electrical fence around these cows, and they'll be on one square or one part of the pasture for one day. Then like a week later, they'll move them somewhere else, and then they'll keep rotating them. And what can happen is, those cows come in, they eat that grass, they eat all that vegetation on that plot of land, they digest it, they turn it into viable protein that we can consume. Think about that. Like these plants are taking something that we can't eat, humans, right? I mean, these cows, we can't eat grass, but they're taking that and turning it into something we can eat.
Yes.
Um, they're pooping, taking shit on the, on that plot of land, which is natural fertilizer.
Mhm.
By chewing, by eating those plants get stimulated to grow again.
Yeah.
You're giving them the
Well, it's
natural
similar.
fertilizer.
I had a aquaponic system here, so it's kind of similar to that with the fish poop, being
Yep.
filtered or pumped up into the front, into the
It,
top plant tank.
it's very similar. I mean, that's what manure is. We used manure for fertilizer forever
Yeah.
before we had all this synthetic stuff. And then from there, plants get stimulated to grow. Fertilizer is there. If the water comes down from rain, plants can grow again. And in this growth cycle, what they're doing is they're sequestering carbon, CO2, from the atmosphere, putting it into the plants and back into the soil. And if the soil is healthy, they can actually hold a lot of that carbon, sequester a lot of that carbon. So there's an actual farm out there called White Oak Pastures that had scientists do a life cycle analysis on their farm compared to Beyond Burger or Beyond Meats or whatever it's called. And they actually found that this farm was a carbon sink. They were carbon negative, meaning that the way they were grazing their cattle was actually taking more carbon out of the atmosphere than putting into the atmosphere. So I just don't, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of marketing. And those are the kind of solutions I see going, in the future with climate change and whatnot. I think there's ways, we just have to explore how to scale it. But there's ways to work together with nature in producing our food that provides healthy food to everyone, like real foods, and is good for the planet. So that's really something I really want to explore now in the future of my podcast. I'm having a lot of regenerative farmers come on, and I just want to get that information out to people because I think it's interesting. And I think, like you said, you hit that big question: where do I see food going in the future? And I think if we want a positive change, positive trend, then we're gonna have to get away from this industrial ag system and
Mhm.
think about how agriculture can be done regeneratively.
And the lucky thing is, it all starts with the next time you buy your groceries.
Yeah.
Like you said, go buy from a farmer's market, go buy from an organic farm, go buy from an organic farm market, whatever it be. It's
Or
all,
grow your own.
or grow your own, or hunt your own, or whatever it is.
When I
It's all
was
under your control.
the first time I grew like my own vegetable together with my stepbrother, when I was saying at the beginning when I moved back to Germany, man, that was incredible. Like it was way easier than I thought. And obviously, you're not going to have great success every year if you don't put some time in. But we barely did anything. We just planted these good quality seeds in what we knew was healthy soil and watered them, planted them at the right time of the year. But I mean, that's in the back of the package. And we, we didn't do any weeding really. And we still got a ton amounts of vegetables and so much that I had to give stuff away to my friends. And that was just such an incredible experience for me that where I was
Mhm.
like, wow, more people I think need to do that so they feel that connection to their food that I was kind of experiencing.
Mhm.
It just changes your outlook. You look at food differently.
And it's very doable out where we are. And I think that we need in more urban places. Like I've seen some, of those urban farms,
That
community
is
gardens.
super.
And I think that's super interesting. And I think that's got a lot of legs for the future too.
Yeah, that's something I want to explore more too. I had an urban farmer on to talk about it, and yeah, there's people, beekeepers in cities putting bees on rooftops, or there's a Whole Foods out there where a lot of their vegetables are being grown on the roof of the Whole Foods.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
that's definitely a part of the future of food, and then it's just a question of can we scale it all? Like, are there enough people demanding it, and are there enough people willing to go back to those kind of jobs, I guess, right? And I think a lot of people would enjoy that kind of work again, because it's meaningful and yeah, you just get healthier.
hmm. Yeah, and it's definitely something, and it's definitely kind of community is a big part of it. And I think that in today's day and age, there's not as many, especially with COVID, obviously, now there's just not as many community building things. And even before, other than, I think that traditionally church has been like a big community builder.
Hmm.
And there, other than sporting events, there's really not that many big community builders, and church I feel like is just as decreased and is decreasing in general. But I think that if we can start to get people together who care about the food that they're eating and who care about the food that their neighbors are eating, that is a really good way to build community as well. Because it
Huge.
all starts, we can talk and talk and talk about this all we want, and we can, talk about what the government is or isn't doing, or we can take it into our own hands and really start to do some things in our own community. And when I say
Mm,
our, I mean we as humans. Like we can, it starts today. It starts in your own street, wherever it is.
I love that. Absolutely. Yeah. For people in cities, like we in La Crosse here, we have a community garden I've helped out at during my first 2 years at college. And you would walk home with two huge bags of veggies for free just for working there for a couple hours. So,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, like you said, I think food is a huge community builder. Like I love having these cookouts. I have an outdoor kitchen and with two big fire pits, and we just, had like 20 people come over, all outdoors, of course. And it was special. Like around the holiday times, I cooked in the open fire and everyone brought a little food, and just such a great community builder, and it really gets you talking to friends. I mean, that's another thing, right? The dinner, like how many people are still sitting together to have dinner every night? I don't think, I
I
mean,
was gonna.
that's
I was thinking about that too. I mean, yeah, I haven't. Like, I think I have like I could probably count on one hand how many family dinners I have a year. Like, it's just not a thing. Like, it's just not a thing anymore. And I know a lot of people that would agree. Like a lot, especially kind of our generation. Like, it's just not a thing to have family dinners. And there's nothing there's nothing wrong with that as long as that community feel is being replaced by something else.
yeah, I do think though, if we had those dinners more, I think it would be healthy for the family, but also healthy for us, because it's just a great time to review the day, right? There's not enough reflection these days. So many people aren't reflecting on their day.
Over
That's where we used to do it. Then whoever cooked the food feels great if everyone else likes it. You get to learn something about your food, especially if you're cooking at home, instead of picking or like having food getting delivered to you or going to a restaurant to eat. So yeah, food is an amazing community builder, I think, and there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah.
And I just see how interested people are in it, especially our generation, because they don't know. It's kind of funny to me. Cooking isn't hard. I eat super simple food. I cook super simple food. I don't need to cook like a chef. I just make sure I have my meat and vegetables, maybe some nuts, some fruit. Like I love berries, and I make it in the most simple way possible. A great way to make vegetables is just to cut up a bunch of different vegetable ingredients, dose them in some olive oil or some lard or whatever, salt, pepper, put them out in a baking sheet, and put them in the oven. Give it 20, 30 minutes until it's all tender, and obviously don't want to burn it, but it takes like 10 minutes of prep, and you're just putting it in the oven, and then
Yeah.
you have a huge plate of veggies. And then what I love doing is, I eat a lot. I'm in college, so I still, and I want to get good quality food. So meat wise, sadly, since we are not really subsidizing these organic farms, organic meat is still somewhat expensive.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of the cheaper meat is that way because the way it's produced in these giant slaughterhouses and whatnot. But I eat a lot of like ground meat burger, and I will just make a big pan of veggies, just cut up veggies, cook them up, put those on the side, then put in the meat, roast that up, and add the veggies to it, and you'll have like a big skillet almost of veggies and meat, and that's literally what I eat most of the time. It doesn't
Yeah.
get boring because you always change it up. One day I'll have venison, one day I'll have beef, one day I'll have squash, the other day I'll have onions, peppers, and broccoli. I mean, it doesn't get boring to me at least, and it's not hard to start cooking, but a lot of people our age think it is for some reason, or they're
Yeah.
just too lazy. But yeah, once you have those connections with your food, I think you're willing to put more time into it too.
Yeah. Well, I think we are lazy. I think, it's weird because again, um uh, we're healthier than are the generation before us, but I think we're also lazy in a lot of sense. Like we don't, and kind of like you going back to reflection, how you said like we don't have enough time reflecting at the end of every day. That's one of the biggest things that has helped me, is just kind of getting away from the constant like overstimulation that we're exposed to, and giving yourself time just to think, and that's it. And don't overcomplicate it. Like, just give yourself time to think. And the more that you think, and the more that you kind of become aware of your thoughts, and become aware of kind of the vibration of thought that you're on, and whether you're it's more positive, then you begin to get even more positive, and when you're giving yourself that time to think. um so yeah, the family dinner, and just giving yourself time at the end of every day by yourself too is very important.
Well, that's one huge thing, man. When I'm fishing and hunting and foraging, I rarely am distracted by whatever's going on in life.
Mhm.
That's one of the things, that's why one of the reasons I'm so obsessed with it, obviously, is the food that I'm getting from it, but also this like this deep connection to nature that you achieve while being out there, because you're so disconnected from this artificial like bullshit that is bombarding us all day long. This world that we've created as humans. So if you go back to this much more ancestral way of living, even if it's just, once a week or whatever, you're going out fishing, you take away all those distractions, and it's just you and your thoughts. And obviously most of the time you're probably thinking about, how can I get this animal? You're analyzing, what the landscape looks around you, or you're seeing,
But it's
like, if you're
all natural. It's all natural thoughts.
yeah, and that is, I think, you know the pattern building that you achieve by doing these activities outside. Like, this year is the first time while I was foraging in the spring, I really noticed the minuscule seasonal changes, like week by week, because you're looking at
Oh,
plants, you're like, oh,
yeah.
I think this plant might be out now. So you go try to find it. Oh, you see it and you find it like this big, right? Like a couple inches big,
Mhm.
just in its baby stage, basically. Well, then you come back 2 weeks later and it's grown and everything around it has grown, so like you're in tune with nature on a whole nother level. It gives you time to reflect in an amazing way, really, without all these distractions, because you can't have your phone. I mean, people still do it, but I make an effort not to have my phone out, when I'm hunting or whatever, just because I
Yeah.
want to I want to be in that environment. I want to get those chances to reflect and really really feel like, what as much as possible, what people were thinking and feeling way before agriculture, way before
Yeah.
society, because
Yeah.
that's what they were doing a lot of the times.
I mean,
They
yeah, at the end of the day, it comes down to just doing things that the majority of people aren't doing. And it's as
yeah,
simple as that. I mean, if you want to be different, but do different. Like, just do different. Do what people aren't doing.
and that's in a of something very exciting. I've always been like that. I've always refused to be basic. Like, I
Yeah.
kind of take pride in it. Some people might s- think it like I'm strange or whatever, but I just don't like following the crowd. I don't like following. I don't like being a sheep. It's just
Yeah.
something I've never liked. And
No.
food is a great way to get out of that, to really break out of that matrix. And once you go down these rabbit holes, I'm telling you, you'll get healthier. You just you learn so much about the world too, because
Mhm.
food is connected to everything in a very interesting way. Economically, health wise, just um,
Everything. It's
communally. Yeah,
I want to talk a little bit more about podcasting. So, like, kind of people, especially our generation and even older generation, people in general, very rarely sit down like we are doing right now and just have. And Joe Rogan talks about this, because there's very few podcasts that are, an hour and a half, 2.5 hours long. And I think, we probably wouldn't do this conversation. A lot of the, podcasts wouldn't be that conversation if it's not for a podcast, but that it forces you into having these very, very long form, in-depth conversations, and getting to places that usually vulnerable places that probably would never be touched if it's just kind of in passing. I think that, there's so much value in that alone. And from my point of view, and from yours too, I'm guessing, and just being able to talk to so many different people. I'm on to whatever 17 in-depth, hour to 2 hour long conversations. You learn more in just those conversations than from a lot of, classes, because these are real life people that have a real life story and that have, kind of their own knowledge database, you could say.
Yeah, I fucking love podcasts for that. I love the whole long form content. I love this whole idea of bringing back conversations, long form conversations, because yeah, you can figure out things in a long form conversations that you just can't figure out in these short form 5 minute clips, 5 minute interviews. It's just not possible. There's several things I probably said today where, I wish I would have said them maybe differently, but we have the time to really discuss it and bring out the main points. But I think podcasting, like I said at the beginning, is really going to change. It's going to change the world, and I really hope so. And I hope more people start realizing the power of podcasts. And like you said, the amount of things you can learn by starting. Well, it's one of the reasons I started mine too. Is like, hey, I want to talk to these people because they have crazy amounts of knowledge.
Yeah,
I want them to be almost like my mentors, right? In a way, like not really, but in a way.
definitely.
And
Yeah.
and yeah, and the amount I learned from podcasts early on was just more than I'd ever learned in high school. Just it's just such an amazing way to communicate or to get a message out or just to learn. I'm also like an auditory learner. I think I like doing it. I like listening to podcasts when I'm at the gym or when I'm cleaning my dishes. When I'm cleaning my room. Like it's just awesome. I don't know. I'm a big fan. I'm gonna keep pushing podcasts as hard as I can.
Mhm. Yeah, there's so much to learn, and there's unlimited people. And it's funny because I was kind of like forced into it a little bit. I started it about maybe a month after getting to Miami this past semester. And I get there, and I started having these realizations and seeing, like, I was just super, I guess you could say, like woke in my own mind. Like, I was just kind of like, I could see the matrix like physically right in front of me, like literally, kind of the way the
Love
dorm
that.
structured, kind of the way people were moving, everyone's on their phone and shit. So I started thinking, oh, social media is the problem. Social media, that's it. All these, but that's because I was just seeing all the negatives. You know, people posting very, very similar pictures on Instagram and constantly sending pictures back and forth on Snapchat, wasting time and shit. But I talked to Lance, who was at a Coconut Grove Farmers, a vegan farmers market. But he was saying that social media is the solution. It may be the problem, but it's also the solution, because if you're putting out, and this dude has like 10K followers, he's posting 10 posts a day, but it's all super good content about, he's big in like health and stuff. Um, but if you're putting out good content, whether it be this or smaller clips of this eventually, like that's kind of the end game and solution. So I was thinking, okay, how do I was literally on the track of like, do I want to create another platform for people to discuss ideas? And I was like all over the board, and I'm like, the platform's already here, I'm just gonna use it, I'm just gonna and I started, I like to just go on LinkedIn and stuff and just like call people, or like schedule Zooms with like different people in the food industry, especially. And I was just thinking, like, there's so much value in some of these conversations that I think people should hear them. And so that's kind of how I was kind of like forced into it. I'm like, all right, this is it. And it's super sustainable. You can do it forever.
And I think you're doing everything right in that way. Me being not saying I don't want to be basic and follow a crowd also usually means that I'm not one to I don't want to be told too much what to do, So I'm not a big fan of some of these platforms censoring in numerous ways. Like sadly, a lot of the carnivore, regenerative farming stuff out there is being censored in some platforms. Because I don't know why, but I guess they don't want that narrative to get out that there is regenerative farming that can be done in a way that is still sustainable for the planet. But yeah, it's just these long form conversations. you just get down to the bottom of things that you can't get on some of these social media platforms. And I really see they're trying to platformatize. I think that's the word, platformatize. It sounds strange, but I'm pretty sure that's an actual word. I had to look it up for one of my classes. But Spotify and Amazon and whatnot, they're trying to turn these podcasting into a platform. They're trying to take the freedom in podcasting away, and that's why we need Apple to continue being the steward of podcasting that it's been so far. And there's a really cool program out there right now called Podcasting 2.0, the Podcast Index. You need to get your podcast on there. It's basically trying to preserve free speech in podcasting by creating a podcast index that will never remove certain shows. Um, it's all being done by Adam Curry, who's actually the podfather. He's the one who invented the RSS feed. So the technology behind podcasting, and he's doing some great work. And I'm just excited to see where podcasting goes, man. Like I read some stats this year. I think we have 100 or 1 million more podcasts now that were added in 2020.
Great.
Think about that. Although it's only a tiny amount of those podcasts that are out there right now that are consistently uploading episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still a lot of room.
There's a lot of room, and there's unlimited room. Like
Exactly.
The good thing about this is, like, we're talking about all the pros that we see in it, and not once did we think about, big numbers. Like, it's literally at a very personal level how much you can gain from just personally doing it. Like, I'm not thinking about, my followers or my YouTube subscribers at all. Like, I just don't care. Like, I would do it just for the sake of doing it. And also, the cool thing about it is, like, when you die, like this, like, what do you want to be? What do you want your legacy to be? Like, do you want, like, because this is all going to be online for eternity until the world blows up. Like, so I see that as awesome. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, this is our legacy. This is our, physical legacy, I guess you could say.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, like you said, I love the idea of this being out there forever. And a lot of these conversations are evergreen content, meaning that it can be listened to 5-6 years from now, and it's still often stuff that's viable then, that's still current, because you're not just, unless you're making podcast episodes that are only about, things that are trending right now, or things that are hot that gain people's attention, then you're maybe, in it for the short term. But if you're trying to just get on, like, honest people on to talk about what they know, and that stuff is not always correct. That's one thing with podcasting. You get that in social media too, though, or just the internet. Don't take everything I said today like at face value. You need to do your own research, and that's one of the issues I think we are having with social media, and just the politics right now. It's just people aren't willing. People were really easily, or we really easily jump into groupthink, but we don't take the time to really research. And that's another thing with food. Like, I wish people just dove in and started to get interested more, and
It's
and
funny
just go
you
down the
say
rabbit holes.
group thought, because I was in my business law class, and the professor asked, what do you guys think is the most prevalent problems in America? And you get people saying climate change, you have people saying, racial tensions, whatever it be. And I said group thought. And that just kind of, everyone was like, what? Like, what do you say? Like, because it's like these kids, when you're constantly watching the news, and when you're constantly consuming content on socials, we're being force fed so much shit. And
We're being
especially,
programmed.
exactly. And the problem is the two-party system at the end of the day, because 95% of people, I don't know what the stat is, but whatever, the vast majority of people identify as being in either liberal, conservative, Democrat, or Republican. And when you identify yourself as that, and when you follow, all of these different pages that are on the left wing or right wing, then that's all you're going to see. And when you surround yourself with people that are also in that group thought mindset, it's your opinion is just going to be like constantly brought to life, and people, and you think that it's viable when you're not actually hearing anyone else's opinion. That's the whole problem, and that's why we're so polarized today. It's such an issue.
Same goes with vegan and carnivore, and plant-based, animal-based. Like, it's the
Yeah,
exact same thing I see happening there. And
I think we need to get away from a us versus them or a either or mentality. It can be there can be and like
and
there can be
that's where I hope podcasting comes in, because
gray area.
yeah, gray area where you can have different people on with different mindsets, and hopefully your listeners are open-minded and they won't just turn it off once they hear something that they don't agree with. That's
Yeah.
something I'm really working on, just stay open-minded as much as I can. And I do think that comes with wanting to be what I like to call it, but I'm not the one that termed this term, but a perpetual learner. Like, that's a huge thing right now. We talked about people being lazy in regards of cooking and learning where the food comes from, but that can be applied to everything. We've become really lazy, and people stop learning. They just accept after a while that, oh, you always hear these older people that are like, yeah, if I were younger, I could probably still learn this. Like, that's not how I think at all. I'm all about having a growth mindset. I know that skills are what's gonna bring me forward in the future.
Hmm.
Focusing on skills. Like, have you ever heard of Tom Bilyeu? He does this sick podcast called Impact Theory and Show. It's basically a social impact company that's teaching people how to think in an entrepreneurial way, or just like not just entrepreneurial, but how to kick ass basically in life.
Hmm.
And he had this amazing quote. Let me see. I wrote it down if I can find it, because I wanted to share it with you. It was, let's see, quick, because it was basically. Let me see if I can remember it. It was basically that the what you get by achieving your goals is not as important as the person you become by trying to achieve those goals. And that's true, for cooking, that's true for hunting, foraging, and anything you do, podcasting.
Yeah.
It's as you set goals and you try to achieve them. And you might not get to that goal, but you're learning along the way. And that mindset is, I think, what's going to keep people from just being lazy and following just talking points on one
Yeah,
side
yeah.
of the spectrum.
And I think that I've directly learned so much just from doing and just from putting myself into a position where I'm building a couple businesses. Um, and a lot of the things that you learn may not be like, yeah, I've learned some more technical things, but a lot of them are not technical at all. It's basically conditioning your mind and your mindset into being whatever you want to be, kicking ass, whatever entrepreneurial, like when you live every day as an entrepreneur and when that's the only thing that you're doing, like obviously that's going to be reinforced in a good way. Like you're going to be learning things that you normally wouldn't. And so that's kind of gathering that, and from everything that I've learned over the past 3 years, and basically also what was interesting too, this first semester, I really didn't learn much from any of my classes except for business law. I didn't really learn that much in the classes themselves, but like putting myself in that environment and putting myself through those classes made me learn so much just about the real world. And when you switch your mindset into being a perpetual learner, and to not, and literally every waking second we're learning. It doesn't matter whether I'm on this podcast or as soon as I get, like as soon as I leave the house, if I'm in the car, I'm learning. Like so when you switch your mindset to, learning doesn't just happen in the classroom, and learning, real practical learning happens by, doing. It happens by talking to people that do, and doing the things that you want. That's where the real valuable learning comes in, and that's constant, eternal.
The one thing, though, that I want to mention on top of learning is finding a mentor. I brought it up earlier. Finding a mentor has been the biggest thing for me to progress fast in hunting, fishing, and foraging. I have this goal of I want this quality food, and I want to remove myself as much as possible from this industrial agriculture and food system. But how do I get there the fastest? Because a lot of these skills, whatever it is, takes time to get there. It just takes effort. But finding a mentor and establishing a relationship with someone who knows what they're doing, I think is key. And for anything really, and obviously you don't just want that to be a take again. You want to, also give them something, but that can be, I don't know, some of my friends here that teach me how to fish. I'll do some, like I'll bring them some homemade food or something. It doesn't always need to be like you exchanging skills, but it just make it a give and take, and be willing to just ask people. Ask questions. That's how you learn. And I think you'd probably say the same, right? Mentorship is huge.
Definitely, definitely. And finding mentors in a ton of different areas too.
Yeah.
Finding mentors doesn't necessarily mean just parents or grandparents. Like it can be, and something that I was talking about on one of the other podcasts, like mentors in today's day and age, I think can be a Joe Rogan. I think it doesn't, regardless of your socioeconomic situation or your family situation, you can find mentors online, and or whether it be you or me or whatever it is, like mentors, like a lot of these podcasters and YouTubers. I don't know about a lot of them, but a good amount of them, like me and you as smaller ones, like I mean, I don't know about you, but if someone were to email me and had questions about starting a business or food or whatever it is, like I'd love to help, because even just me uploading a video to YouTube and seeing, even if it's as small as like 30 views, 20, 30 views, like I still think 20, 30 people, like I don't think views, I think people, like 20, 30 people, like
It's a lot of people.
it's a lot of people. It people get it twisted that's such a small amount, and maybe relative to YouTube and the algorithm it is, but relative to physical people, it's a lot of people, and that's enough
Yeah.
for me to keep going.
Yeah. And I love that idea of, yeah, your mentor doesn't need to be a physical person. Like, did you know? It
Mhm.
can just be someone whose content you surround yourself with a lot, that you respect, that you get a lot of value from. Um, and yeah, that could be Joe Rogan. Like for me, that is literally Joe Rogan is one of those people. I'm a huge Joe Rogan fan, and I love what he's done for podcasting, and he's really paved the way for everyone else. And I used to follow this guy called Dan Pena, and he would always say, "You are the 5 people you surround yourself with."
Yeah,
And it's like it's such a powerful quote.
yeah,
It's not obviously like you. It's not ideally you would only want to be really disciplined. Only like surround yourself with people that you think you thrive from, and they thrive from your energy. Right? It's not always that easy, but it's just something to think about. And one of those people, it doesn't, like, again, it doesn't need to be 5 physical people. It can be just someone you really respect, a role model,
yeah.
someone who you want to be like. So
And
yeah.
I love that idea of I'm very, very, or especially over the past few months, like when I went to Miami, I was able to really figure out who my true friends are, because like I'm not physically there anymore, or here in Wisconsin, like it's those people that are going to continue to text you or FaceTime you or call you or whatever it is. And I'm trying to, like I was telling I it ended up being like 5 people, literally. It was funny, it was like literally like five or six people here that I really consider my very, very close friends. And when I got back here and I'm talking to them in person, I said, I want to come back here, not just to, no, I don't want it to be like, the past 2 years with us just like partying and like drinking and all this stuff constantly. I want to come back. Yes, like, of course, it's fun. Let's do it. But like, I want to come back to a team that while we're doing that, we talk about making money in business. We're not
Fuck
talking
yeah.
about, we're not talking about fucking random ass shit that doesn't matter, and that's not gonna, if it's not benefiting, like I want to talk about shit that's gonna benefit me tomorrow. I don't want to, I can enjoy the moment, but I want to constantly be kind of pushing. Like I don't care if it's a Friday, Saturday night. I want to be talking about like life and the future too. I hate
Absolutely.
I can reminisce on the past and good memories, but let's make better memories. Like there's better memories than sitting in a basement drinking. Like there are way better memories to be made than that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I kind of removed myself from the whole partying and drinking scene a long time ago, mostly because I didn't not see any value in wasting my next day,
Yeah,
like that. So, and it also, going down the keto low carb route, alcohol really isn't the best in health wise, and just if you're trying to achieve certain weight loss goals, alcohol is definitely not the answer there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
I would I've been door dashing a lot. Like
oh, really? Me too.
really, yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone on that. You make good money. I've been making like 19 an hour. Like
More so probably where you are than up here because there's more
yeah.
business. But I've been wanting to when I'm back home.
Oh
I don't.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy because like it's like Delafield, Oconomowoc, Dowsman area, and then you kind of you naturally kind of get sucked east. Like I did it on Saturday. I started in Waukesha and then I ended up like kind of sketch Milwaukee, but it was like I okay, just okay, you know, I hadn't really been making that much. I don't have much personal cash flow because I landscaping. I get a little bit of money during landscaping season. KP, it's long term, but um, I was thinking I need to start making some money, so I tried that, and I just listened to Joe Rogan and different podcasts, and I was listening like just the amount of maturation and stuff that you can learn by listening. This is an example. Like I was listening to a guy, an astronaut that spent 200 days, in space and kind of talking about his perspective of looking down on Earth. And he said that he's traveled around the world since then, and he always feels like he's home. And that was, it's important to constantly kind of keep things in perspective and don't really worry about the tiny things because they are tiny. And listening to that while being at like 76 in Capital Milwaukee, it's like you grow a lot. You're forced to grow a lot, so yeah, you're making money
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously DoorDash is for me something I like doing it a lot. Because I don't, it's something where I can kind of be my own boss in a way. I think that's why a lot of people our age like it. You're not your own boss, but you're a contractor. And, so in a way
You
you are.
do it for however long you want or whatever you want to
Yeah.
do.
You can, the thing is though, I'm mostly delivering super processed food, so I'm like,
Yeah,
for me it's always like, well, I'm kind of supporting this that I talk about not supporting, I don't want to support. So I've switched to Instacart a bit here, which
okay.
is actually another cool app, where you're just getting grocery runs.
How much
But
have you made on that?
similar amounts, but again, I feel like here in lacrosse it's just not enough business. Like a lot of people are jumping in as drivers and stuff, but I think they need to get more people to use it first, And
Yeah,
that's where I see an opening for really sweet app that's like getting food from, local farms or something like that. That'd be cool. There's something out there called Vinder, but it's not in Wisconsin. It's only in some states where you can, like, even as a vegetable grower, you can sign up as a grower, and then you can either, like, you have access to this whole audience base of people who want to get local food, and you can sell to them. They can come pick it up, or you can deliver to them.
that's
So,
cool.
like,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
not.
you know, with this whole food system thing, we just got to find a way to. We need people like you, entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs that are just wanting to make changes with the right science, not just based in this groupthink stuff, not just like, carnivore is good, we only eat plants, we only eat meat, or vegan is the only answer, we only eat plants, but like try to find some unity there, and figure out ways to scale these more natural ways of growing food, and producing food that are
Yeah,
better for people in the long term.
and scale not only that but also thought. Scale
Thought.
this gray area of thought, and that comes from that comes from this, that comes from growing. Yes, you know when I say I don't care about numbers, I don't. But at the same time, a lot of subscribers means a lot of people seeing your stuff and hearing your stuff. Um, but Joe Rogan the other day was talking about, like, he was just saying, like, why isn't there more of this? Like, why people are constant. No wonder why there's so much group thought. Like, because when I don't know, have you seen like the Social Dilemma and stuff? Like,
I have yet to watch that, but I understand.
yeah,
I've been like you were saying earlier, that the vegan farmer, social media is the solution. It's not necessarily the downfall. Um, I see it similar like him. There's both ways to it. But yeah, continue what you were gonna say about social dilemma.
yeah. So he's just saying, obviously, because I watched the movie, but before I watched it, I was kind of like, yeah, I already understand it. It was pretty, it just went into depth on the way that the algorithm works and stuff. But the example that they used is, you could look up cute dogs and the algorithm is going to just show you more cute dogs. Like, it's like, it doesn't it's not trying to make you angry. It's not showing you necessarily political divisive things, unless you want to see that, unless, like, that's what you're liking and commenting. And when you are getting into comment arguments and constantly liking pictures of your side of the aisle or whatever it is, you're just going to get fed more of that. But I unfollowed CNN and Fox. I unfollowed all those mainstream news. I don't even really hear about like that much news, because at the end of the day, like, for example, the stuff that was happening at the White House, like, it's just funny how people get so tense about it and stuff. And, like, both on social media and in person, it's like, it was even as close to home as, like, my mom and my sister were talking about how it's like ridiculous and stuff. And I'm like, I barely even have heard anything about it, because I filtered my socials to that. And, like, if people, at the end of the day, people just need to focus on, like, themselves and the things that they can control. I have no say over what happens over there. I can't do anything about it. Like, I'd rather be happy in my own life. And if you want to manifest kind of your heaven on earth, do it, and don't give in to the matrix and what society thinks you should be consuming.
Yes. No, absolutely. But also with that whole thing, I do think people should remove themselves a bit from the politics and the news cycle and whatnot. But if you see that the greater system is going toward a space where that you don't think is right, like I said, I'm not for censoring at all. Like, I
Uh-huh.
really, really, really value freedom of speech,
Mhm.
the way we've had it here in the U.S. And obviously, it's never been like 100% freedom of speech, but we have more freedom of speech than most countries. And if we're getting to a point where the news cycle is censoring certain stuff, or it's just not, it's only focusing on certain stories to get people's attention, then I think we do need to speak up a bit. Like, you
Yeah.
don't just want to remove yourself, and that's why I think podcasts are going to save it in the long term.
Yeah.
It's literally the last hold for freedom of speech.
I know, that's what I was saying. Like, that was my conclusion. Like, this is it. Like, this is the best way to make an impact at scale, and to get, my thoughts, your thoughts, people's thoughts out there, like, at scale. Um, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, podcast is the end game in a lot of
Yeah,
ways.
I hope so.
Yeah. All right, Polly. Well, is there anything else that you wanna touch on today?
Yeah, I guess I just want to say that I think people, when they start thinking about their food on a deeper level, you have a lot of realizations. You learn, it's an opportunity for you to learn these skills that humans have had forever. It's an opportunity for you, if you start cooking at home, not you learn, you get healthier, you come together in a community with friends, like you were saying, or like we were saying it earlier. You have chances for reflection, because cooking is really like a meditation almost, and you just feel more connected, and it's just fun altogether. So I really encourage people to start cooking at home again, to start looking into the food that they're eating. Learn how to read food and food labels, or just take a look at food labels. Like, how many people just get foods in the grocery store and they never even look at the label?
Or eat
Yeah.
food that doesn't have a label.
Or that, yeah, mostly buy foods that don't have a label.
Yeah.
That's huge. Um, you'll even get meat nowadays with labels, but that's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't need to. If it doesn't need to have a label, it's probably something, a whole food that you want to consume.
Yeah.
And just, for people who don't know how to read food labels at all, I would just look for foods that have, ingredients that you agree with, stuff that you can actually like pronounce for the most part, and then make sure the ingredients are listed based on the amount, or based on the priority. So the first ingredients listed are usually the ones that are, or that the product consists the most of. So, just little things like that. Get educated, start getting excited about food. And then if you want to, if you really want to have a control of where your food is coming from, the best way I think to do that is to connect with your farmer. And there's websites out there that will, that they're like an index of organic farms in your area. Go to the farmers market, start growing your own, get into wild foods, learn how to hunt, fish, forage. That moment when you catch your first fish, I always see people that take fishing for the first time. When they catch that fish, their eyes are wide. They're like, you know, yeah, you're catching another animal and you're bringing, you're maybe causing some harm to it. But if you're not just it's not like you're just going to kill that animal and leave it there, right? You're going to use it. You're going to feed yourself and your friends and family with it. So it's like just these incredible experiences you get out of all out of getting into food, basically, just going down those rabbit holes. And I really hope and wish that more people start doing that, because otherwise we're going to get to a point where we lose all those, cooking skills and all that knowledge, just with so many other things um that like we've lost throughout history. And if we want a more sustainable planet, we also need to make sure that we're not just listening to marketing from certain companies. We're not going into these sites, carnivore food, carnivore, plant-based, like all cows are bad. Like, it's really all this stuff is really complex, and we need to have as many conversations around it as possible to really um, talk about it on a deeper level and figure out what's right. And yeah, so with that, I guess, yeah, I just want to encourage people to do due diligence and do some research by themselves, and just get into it. Yeah, just do it.
Optimize yourself and the planet mentally, physically, spiritually through food.
Yeah, through food, and don't get stuck or caught on just one way of thinking. Keep an open mind with it.
Mm-hmm.
I always
And
say,
give yourself time to reflect, and give yourself time each day to have your own thoughts, and to not, when if you're sitting on the toilet or something, and you naturally or habitually go on Instagram, don't just try not doing that once. Just sit there, maybe take a shit without looking at your phone, and just see what comes into your head. Because at the end of the day, especially if you're putting yourself through some cool experiences throughout the day, you end up having some cool thoughts. Like, that's naturally too, like just sitting there, not induced by any drugs or alcohol or nothing. Like, you're just sitting there, and your brain can produce some pretty cool thoughts that you wouldn't even know are there most of the time when you're constantly consuming socials.
absolutely, yeah, no, that's huge. And I always say, for me, I named my podcast Year of Plenty, and I think when you learn all these skills, every year will be a year of plenty. Once you learn all these skills and knowledge around food. So that's kind of what I want people to take away.
Mhm. All right, thanks, Poldi, so much for coming on. Yeah, we got to do that podcast with Evan soonish, but
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll have to do one for mine soon for sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me come on. We just almost had a 2-hour conversation. I wasn't sure how long this is going to take, but loved it. It was awesome. I'm willing to come on whenever again and share more knowledge in the future. But yeah, thanks for having me.
That's great. Yeah, I'll send you. I'll get this uploaded, and I'll send it over to you as soon as it's up. So
Sounds good.
awesome, man. Have a good one.